All right, welcome punters. We are going to be discussing the 2020 Brownlow Medal. I'm here with the professor, Mr. Michael Bailey. Thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time. Ruckman, let's talk about, obviously, Gawn's going to start slow to the season, but very topical the last few years, how well they'll poll. What are your thoughts on Grundy or Gawn? Probably more Grundy this season, polling really well and potentially changing, the curse of the Ruckman.
Yeah, Grundy, obviously he's in the midfield all the time. And I think he's polled, 17 and 23 the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So he's sort of stepped up. And before that, he hadn't really polled a lot of votes.
Yeah.
I would, based on this performance, if he has another good year like he did last year, sure, he'll be top 10.
Right.
And Maxi Gawn, do you say he's a slow start? Is he carrying some sort of injury?
I think he's got an injury to start the season, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be hesitant against betting against blokes that haven't had a full pre-season. Yeah. I think there's correlation between getting a good full pre-season and being able to play a good consistent year.
Yeah.
And to win a Brownlow, you've got to basically play good all year.
Yeah.
It's not just...
You play 20 plus games, don't you?
Yeah, typically you do. Yeah, and you need to play well, all that time.
So that's something to keep an eye on. I try to do that with my futures bets on Rising Stars or Brownlows. You can't see niggles over the preseason. You can't see big surgeries. You need them to be flying on the track.
You want them fit and healthy. That's the key. But then, obviously your preseason forms, they're travelling in the first few rounds.
Getting a bit of it. And how much does the team come into it? Do you look at, is team performance, is that probably something of the past now that we see Cripps polling so well in losses? Is that something that you don't need to worry about as much, team performance?
Yeah, even though Cripps polls well in losing games, and I think we said he averages 0.6 in losing games, but he averages 1.2 in winning games.
Yeah.
So obviously Carlton are going to want to win. Yeah. For him to win, they're going to want to win more games than they lose. Yeah. So we know that the majority of the votes go to the winning teams. There's always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
But if your team's winning more often, then you're more likely to get the votes.
Okay, so it's still relevant.
I
feel like the Gary Ablett
totally
Gold Coast
relevant.
stuff
if you look at Fife, for example, in losing games, in losing team, Fife's the third ranked player in current performance, and he averages around about probably 0.56 votes a game.
Yeah.
However, in winning performances, he averages 1.5 votes a game.
Yeah, wow.
So even though Freo didn't have a great year last year, in those games that they did win, he was getting votes, every time. Yeah. And then he was still picking up the votes in the games that they didn't win. So,
okay. Just a couple of roughies. I'd love to just throw some names at you. I've sillily made an investment on Clayton Oliver. I feel like the redhead effect. I steamed into Melvin last year, which was not wise punting. But I feel like he's someone that gets a lot of the footy and can accumulate. If they are able to perform this season, can you see anything from him? He's about 51s in the market.
Yeah, I think there's evidence to suggest that Melbourne have some sort of, they bounce up and down. So every second year they seem to go quite well.
Oh, well, that gives me some confidence.
And Clayton Oliver, let me just have a quick look at my stats. So last year I had him to get 12 votes and he basically got 12. Mm-hmm. He gets threes. But he misses out. He polled a 2-vote. He got a 2-vote ranked 7, which is unusual. The majority of votes are going to players in the top 5, and he's polled votes from being ranked 4 and.
Sorry, we'll just flag that.
4 and 6.
Yeah.
Maybe start the whole Clayton Oliver session again.
You think so? Is that all right? Can I?
Yeah. Just give me before you do that. Let me just see if I can. I'm looking for a certain sheet.
I probably only have a couple more for you and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyone else, boys? You want me to throw at Michael? Missy Higgins?
Rocky Whitfield?
No, I tried that one.
Oh, good. I thought Rocky Whitfield was in the right poll.
Yeah, he polled okay.
What about Matt Crouch? Because if you look at Matt Crouch's numbers in Supercoach and Fantasy, he's a massive accumulator.
Yeah.
40 a game.
Yeah, he never gets quite as. Yeah, no, he hasn't. No, it doesn't tend to equate.
I don't rate his stats at all because they're such
fake news.
Yeah, a lot of fake news stuff because he's a massive accumulator.
Yeah, there's certain players like that. So Clayton Oliver, for example, he's polled. I had him getting in 2017, I had him getting 16 votes. He only got 12. 2018, I had him getting 17 and a half, and he only got 13. Last year, I had him getting 11 or 12, and he basically got 12. So there's been situations where he's in a similar boat, where he's getting a lot of the footy and perhaps not quite getting the votes that he should be getting.
Right.
So
You've poured cold water on me. I want to tear up my ticket already.
yeah, look, he's a good player in his class, but I don't know if he's quite the same. I don't think he's in the same class as the blokes we talked about earlier.
So that's what I'm getting from you is you just need to skew to the top. You need to pick watch how the season plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
And pick the really Group 1 horses.
I think you're better to speculate once you've actually got some data coming in rather than to speculate before, because it's a long season and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Yep. But hey, if it's all about turnover for Betfair, get on early.
I'll throw a couple more names at you. Matt Crouch for Adelaide. He's a massive accumulator. They obviously had a shocking season last year and are predicted to do quite poorly on the exchange at the moment. But if they can get a few wins, can you see him polling?
Yeah, look, he's polled some votes in the past, but he's never quite polled as many votes as my models has suggested that he should.
Right.
So there's been a couple of years where he's got less than. So in the last, last 7 seasons or 6 seasons, he's got less than expected 5 out of those 6 seasons.
Right.
So, there's
you like him more than the umpires.
Well, it's not me. My models are completely objective, but you're right. His style of game doesn't lend itself to getting votes from the umpires.
Need a bit more flair and some goals.
The umpires give him less votes than perhaps they should.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
It's not the models that are wrong, it's the umpires.
I like that. West Coast, let's just talk about them really quickly.
Yeah.
Is the theory there they're just going to cannibalise each other between Yo, Gaff, Kelly, and the rest of them? Martin, Shuey.
Yeah, look, they have got a class midfield. I'll be very interested to see how Kelly goes, because Kelly's class act.
Yeah.
He's right up there. He's only played 2 seasons and he's right up there in the average number of votes bowled.
Yep.
And he's pure class.
Right.
So, and if you look at blokes that get a lot of the footy and are class players in the last few years that have changed teams, Tom Mitchell changed, won a Brownlow, Lachie Neale changed and come third. And there's a fair argument to say that Lachie Neale was being held back when he was at Freo, because I think his average votes per game is significantly less in games that Fife was playing in as opposed to games that Fife wasn't playing in.
Yeah, right.
So he's a ball magnet, gets a lot of the footy. So I would think Lachie Neale, if you're looking for players that are not in that top tier of half dozen players, he's sort of certainly next. He's not far off.
Lachie Neale and then Tim Kelly.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I've got any other names to throw at you. I think that's about it. Looking at the top of the market, there's no one else that stands out. There's your Zach Merritts and players like that are the main ball winners from at some of those other clubs, but it just seems to me that there's just a difference between how you're grouping these guys in terms of their chance to win a Brownlow.
Yeah, I think that's all you can do prior to the start of the year. I mean, I can only go off their past performance, and generally the best past performance is how they went last year.
Yep.
And obviously seasons are an individual event for most players. So, and I think it does depend a lot on fitness and injury. So you get some sort of little niggle, and sometimes you can carry that all year. You can, if you're a superstar, you can carry an injury, no worries, because it might take you from being, 10% better than everyone else to being basically the same as everyone else. So you can still carry your place in the team. Yeah. But to be able to stand out and poll votes for the umpires, I think you probably really need to be super fit.
Okay. Cool.
Can I ask one question? So we sat in on a Brownlow thing. You'll have to ask this too.
Yeah, you're gone.
We sat in on a Brownlow thing for like 2 years ago. It was like a champion dart round one, and they thought their model that they looked at said that above having a helmet or having bleached blonde hair or anything else, the biggest polar was actually having a bald head.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Your models look at anything like that or anything like that at all? You'll have to ask him.
Yeah, I'll ask you that. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. There's been some talks, and we as Betfair employees went to an event with Champion Data a couple of years ago, and it was raised that the helmet effect or the bleach blonde hair, your Woe Wodens and stuff back in the days, and your Ackers to stand out to win now is, and Brayshaw popped up wearing that head unit a couple of years ago. is having a shaved head. So does your model take any, is it influenced by any of those standout factors that we talk about?
Yeah, very early in the piece, when I first started modelling about 20 years ago, there was a significant effect for players that had a distinctive appearance. And I sort of went through all the players in each team and just flagged whether they were distinctive or not.
Right.
But over the years, and it might have been a little bit of media attention, that certainly dropped off with the blonde-haired players likely to get more votes. So I think there was a guy that wrote an article from Adelaide, I can't remember his name now, but he speculated on this. So I went back and did a little bit of research, and I think my answer to him was it wasn't necessarily a case that the bald players were more likely to poll votes. It was just an unusual example where some of the best players in the league were actually bald.
Better footballers are bald.
Ablett was bald. Chris Judd was bald.
Yep.
So and they completely stood out. And there's another argument. Okay, what about players with Indigenous players with darker skin?
Yeah.
And the reality is most of the Indigenous players are actually just a class above everyone else in the competition.
Yep.
So it's not so much they stand out more. It's just the colour of their skin or their heritage for some reason makes them better players, more intuitively skillful.
Yep.
So, look, I wouldn't put a lot of weight in how players look these days. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, it certainly could be a factor, and that might be one of the reasons why Fife got so many votes last year.
Yeah.
Not so much any headgear that he had, but that massive big arm sleeve, the black arm sleeve, because every time he lifts his arms up for a mark, more often than not he's marking it. You see that big black sleeve, so it does stand out. So it's an interesting topic for conversation, but I wouldn't put a lot of weight into it.
All right, Michael, let's talk about forwards. And it just seems to me that Buddy Franklin's one of the best forwards of all time and polls reasonably well. You see those 15 to 20 vote seasons from him, but he's never going to win one. And it just sort of seems to me like, in the next decade or two, that's not going to change if he can't win one.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you. Clearly, it's been a midfielder's medal for the last 20 years. All the votes, the majority of the votes, go to the players that are in the midfield. Plus, when you're in midfield, you're around the ball more often, so you're more likely to play well. So you're more likely to have a consistent season, rather than if you're stuck in the forward line and you're in a losing game, the ball just might not be coming down as often as it does when you're winning. So it is hard. It's interesting that there was I think it might have been in the paper today or yesterday, a comparison between Buddy and Wayne Carey. And Wayne Carey never polled as many votes as my mathematical modelling could give him either. There might have been other reasons why that. I mean, I don't think you ever have had a very good relationship with the umpire.
I can imagine.
But it's bias against forwards. It's really biased towards midfielders.
Yeah. Because he gets more of it too. You're not talking about just a bloke that sits in the square and clunks them and kicks six or more. He's getting upfield. So I think leading into my next question would just be, how dominant is the disposal stat, and is that the most important thing? If I'm looking at the stats after a game and I'm trying to say and allocate my own votes to on my own spreadsheet, is that raw disposal number gospel?
It's gospel in that the player that gets most possessions is the most likely to poll votes, but it's not gospel in the fact that if Dangerfield or Dustin Martin gets 30 possessions, it might be a lot different from if Matt Crouch gets 30 possessions.
Yep.
So there's the quality of possession, it's difficult just looking at the raw data to be able to measure the quality of possession. You can look at shots on target or effective disposals, and these things might to some extent measure it, but it's difficult to measure the situations where players break away from the pack and just do standout things. So, and there's a certain class of players, and we've discussed them already, that stand out. You watch what they do and you just go, oh, wow. So
Bontempelli, 25, I just know that there's probably 5 of those that are sort of mesmerising possessions, and I know that that's going to skew his voting.
That's it. And there's a class of player that is more likely to poll 3 votes than 2s and 1s.
Yep.
And for whatever reason it is, but if you go back and look in history, and they're all just champions. So you can use that as a marker of the quality of how good a player is.
Yeah. All right, beautiful, mate. I think we've picked enough detail out of you, and I'd like to invite you back after you've smashed all the bookies and crunched Betfair and moved the whole market. We might get you back on here and find out who's going to win the 2020 after the season. But hopefully, punters have got enough out of this as well.
Cheers.